Tonight, before we begin, take a slow, gentle breath in and let it go. Allow your shoulders to soften. Let your body sink comfortably into your bed. There is nothing more you need to do today. No problems to solve, no messages to answer. This is your time to be calm, to relax, to rest. Tonight's story is soft and quiet, made for the stillness of night. So close your eyes, breathe slowly, and simply listen. This is Emma's story about her grandmother and the garden that still blooms in her heart. I remember the garden before I remember anything else about my grandmother. Before I understood her laughter or the fine lines on her face, I knew the colors. Her small backyard was filled with roses, lavender, sunflowers, and daisies that swayed gently in the breeze. When she held my hand and led me down the narrow stone path, I felt like I was stepping into a secret world. She would whisper, "Gardens listen, Emma. If you speak gently, they grow gently." And I believed her. In the early mornings, she would wake me before the sun fully rose. The grass would be cool beneath my feet, dotted with dew that sparkled like tiny stars. She would bend carefully over the roses, touching their petals as if greeting old friends. The pink ones smelled sweet and light, while the red ones were deep and rich like velvet. She treated every flower as if it had a soul. Sometimes she would place a seed in my palm and close my fingers around it. "This," she would say softly, "is what patience looks like before it becomes something beautiful." As a child, I didn't understand patience. I wanted the seeds to bloom the very next day. I wanted instant color, instant growth. But she would smile and remind me that even flowers need time, sunlight, and care. Beneath an old apple tree in the corner of the garden, she had planted mint and chamomile. On warm afternoons, we would sit there together. She would braid my hair slowly while explaining the seasons. "Life is like this garden," she would murmur. "There is spring, where everything begins. Summer, where everything grows bright and full. Autumn, where we learn to let go. And winter, where we rest." I didn't like the sound of winter back then. I didn't want anything to end. But she would gently tap my nose and say, "Even the flowers need sleep." As I grew older, the garden became my safe place. When school felt overwhelming or friendships became confusing, I would sit among the marigolds and tell them my worries. My grandmother never pushed me to explain. She would simply hand me a watering can and say, "Let the flowers hold your troubles." Somehow, speaking into that quiet space made my heart feel lighter. One evening, a sudden storm rolled in. The sky turned dark and the wind bent the stems nearly to the ground. I felt afraid that everything she loved would be destroyed, but she stood calmly at the door and said, "Storms are part of growing. Roots become stronger this way." The next morning, the garden was still standing, glistening with rain. The flowers were not ruined, they were refreshed. That was the first time I truly understood her strength. When I left for college, she gave me a small envelope of wildflower seeds. "Plant these wherever you go," she said, "so you always carry home with you." I planted them in a small pot by my window. When the first green sprout appeared, I felt her presence so clearly it brought tears to my eyes. We spoke every Sunday, and I would describe each new leaf as if it were a miracle. Over time, her steps grew slower. I began helping more in the garden, lifting heavy pots and trimming branches while she guided me from her chair. One afternoon, as we picked tomatoes together, she looked at the garden with quiet pride and said, "Promise me you'll keep planting." I promised, even though my voice trembled. The last spring we shared was full of color. Tulips bloomed in bright waves, and the air felt sweet with possibility. She told me she was proud of me. I told her everything good in me had grown from her love. When she passed, it felt like winter had arrived without warning. The garden seemed too quiet, too empty. But as I stood among the rose bushes, I noticed small buds forming. Life was continuing. Even in grief, something was preparing to bloom. I knelt in the soil and pressed my hands into the earth she had tended for so many years. The scent of lavender drifted in the breeze, and for a moment I could almost hear her voice reminding me that winter is only a season, not the end of the story. I moved back into her house and began caring for the garden myself. At first, my hands trembled as I trimmed the roses, but slowly, confidence returned. Her lessons lived in my fingers. Spring softened my grief. Summer filled the yard with color and buzzing bees. Autumn painted the leaves gold, teaching me again about letting go. And winter became a time of quiet reflection rather than pain. Now, when children pause by the fence and admire the flowers, I invite them inside. I place seeds in their small hands and tell them about patience. I teach them to speak gently to growing things. And sometimes, beneath the apple tree, I braid a little girl's hair and feel the circle continuing. The garden is no longer just hers. It is a living memory rooted in love. Some nights, I sit outside and look at the stars above the dark branches. I imagine how she once said, "Every gardener leaves fingerprints on the earth." I imagine hers still there, woven into every root and petal. And I realize that love, like a garden, never truly disappears. It simply changes seasons. So as you drift closer to sleep, imagine a peaceful garden. Feel the cool grass, the soft breeze, the gentle hum of life all around you. Remember that growth takes time. Healing takes patience. You are allowed your seasons. You are allowed to rest. Breathe in slowly and let it go. The night is calm. The garden is quiet. And like Emma, beneath the apple tree, you are safe to close your eyes and sleep.